All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Well, hello, everybody. I know, it's wild. Tony has generously joined. There he is. And I am joining from an undisclosed location on the road, but I'm here to say we've got a great show today. And I popped in really to share with you a conversation that I'm going to have with Brian Tyler Cohen. He's a brilliant podcaster, YouTuber, and now author. His book is called Shameless, and it lays bare a lot of what's been going on in American government, specifically with the Republican Party. And look, you know how good it is, because for me to be in a situation where the lighting is this poor, I need very specific lighting. Even when I'm on the road, I can't get the lighting. But back in my studio, I can't get the anyway.
Yeah, it's always a problem, isn't it?
It's always, the lighting is always an issue. Maybe the issue is me and not the lighting. I'm just beginning to realize that. But I know you're going to love it. Brian Tyler Cohen is, as I say, a great mind and a great spokesperson, if you will, for reality and the realities concerning the U.S. government, the U.S. political system, and where we are right now. So that follows in just a moment. I do want to share with you information about our end of summer meetup. It is happening at the end of summer, which is really a good time for an end of summer meetup. August 29th, 2 glorious hours. Now, a lot of these meetups, it's been 2 hours, but only one has been glorious. I'm guaranteeing you both hours will be glorious. Special guests, likely to include some regulars and some new high-profile folks will stop through. Please be part of it. Please join our crew. 6:30 to 8:30, August 29th. That's Pacific time for those who are joining from other parts of the world. And the first 25 people who lock up spots will join us. You can sign up at our PayPal. It's a fundraiser, of course, for the show. So it's $50 donation to lock up a spot. And then once you've made the donation on PayPal, and note meetup when you make the donation, just drop us an RSVP and say, hey, I hit the PayPal link and I'm all set, and I look forward to it. mtsmeetup@gmail.com is the RSVP. mtsmeetup@gmail.com. So first the PayPal, hit the $50, and then mtsmeetup@gmail.com. Thank you for that. So it's a 2-hour Zoom session. We'll send you a link and you just rock it with us. It should be a lot of fun. Kim has done a great job in my absence. I've watched the shows and she's been great, and she'll be great today as well. So I'll talk to Brian Tyler Cohen and talk about his new book, Shameless. And then Kim will ride herd over Florida and Michael Shore and the culture blaster, Michael Snyder, and everything else that we normally do on a Friday. And I will be back on Monday. But next, it's a treat. We'll talk about the new book, Shameless, with Brian Tyler Cohen. Thanks for being here.
The Mark Thompson Show. The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Everybody behave. I've got a big star with us today, all right? Brian Tyler Cohen is someone who I've been watching and listening to for so very long. He's an uber successful podcaster here on this platform, YouTube, and across all podcast platforms. But the most exciting thing is that he's written a new book, and it's called Shameless, and it's great. It lays bare, Republicans' deliberate dysfunction and the battle to preserve democracy. It lays bare the way in which the Republican Party has effectively branded itself in such a way that actually goes opposite the kind of work that they do, which is to dismantle government and to essentially, I'll let him fill in the blanks. But what I love about this book is that it speaks in plain language, and he speaks to and about everyone you know and have seen in public life and political life. So without any further delay, Brian Tyler Cohen. Hello, sir.
Mark, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
The book's great. The book's great.
Thank you.
And one of the things you do, and you do it early on, is you don't take us on a history lesson that doesn't have contemporary reference. So you take us, we start with today, but then you quickly explain, and as I say, in a very plain language kind of way, how we got to today. So I like that we don't, it's not like listening to a history class. It's sort of like, hey, you know this today, this thing we're dealing with. Well, this actually started back here. And to just extend this question even further, and then I'll shut up and let you speak. One of the things I loved is one of the things that I occasionally mention on this show, which is to me, patient zero on the obstructionism of the Republican Party may be Newt Gingrich.
Yep.
And you identify early on in the book Newt Gingrich, and then the ripple effect that the Newt Gingrich obstructionism wrought.
So I think it's important to kind of lay the foundation of of what got us here, basically. And to your point, yes, it's Newt Gingrich in terms of the acrimony in politics today. He had a whole list of words that he offered up to the Republican Party to use in reference to Democrats. And this was the end, basically, of any type of compromise, any type of working together. He even suggested that Republicans go back home to their districts over the weekend so that there was no type of camaraderie between them and their Democratic counterparts. It was just supposed to be a party predicated on obstruction and complete lack of cooperation. So that was Newt Gingrich in terms of that. I also speak about the Ailes memo, which basically became what Fox News is today. It was him laying out the foundation for what he wanted to be a right-wing messaging apparatus that would protect Republicans. Roger Ailes worked for Richard Nixon. He saw what happened when there was no messaging backup for him. And the natural conclusion of that, of course, is Fox News, which has rallied behind Donald Trump, even in the face of something that is objectively so much worse than Watergate. But the difference being that he didn't have to resign. He didn't have to step back. He didn't even lose the support of any of his party because he has that messaging apparatus, which in Fox was willing to back him to the tune of almost $1 billion. So there are a lot of these plans that were laid in place decades ago that we're seeing the results of today.
The media messaging, I love that you emphasize this. It's a real centerpiece of a lot of what you've written. And I think it's all about media messaging. So the Republicans, as you've suggested, and in my circuitous, long-winded setup, I was sort of noting the Republicans messaged very effectively certain things that are actually counter those that they're actually doing.
So they have leaned for so long on their historical branding. And right now we're seeing that play out because yet again, we're heading into another election cycle where Americans are being asked, well, who's better on the economy? And the gut reaction is to say, oh, the Republican Party, they're better on the economy. Who's better for families? Well, that would be the Republican Party. They're the party of family values. Who's better on national security? Who's better on the Constitution? And they get all this credit. And you look at their historical branding, whether it's from back in the days of Reagan or whatever it was, but they've leaned on this idea that they're the party of the Constitution, the party of family values, the party of fiscal responsibility, the party of states' rights, the party of law and order, the party of the military, the party of the police. And in fact, they behave in a way that is completely antithetical to that branding, but they still get all the credit for it. And so the point of this book really was to expose the extent to which they may benefit from this branding, they may revel in this branding, but when you look just an inch beneath the surface, an inch beneath the glossy veneer of their branding, that in fact, they're not the party of family values. They're led by a guy who is right now waiting sentencing for 34 criminal convictions for charges related to a hush money payout he paid for an affair he had while his wife was at home with their infant kid. Is that the party of family values? Fiscal responsibility. They added $7.8 trillion to the debt when Donald Trump was last in office. The party of the Constitution, they were the first party in American history to not abide by the peaceful transfer of power. So on branding point after branding point, they may enjoy the benefits of that branding, but again, they don't behave in a way that would actually bear it out.
And the power of that branding that you speak of, can it be undermined? You actually lay out in the book ways in which, we can take government back from this dysfunction and obstructionism.
you'd mentioned at the top how important it was in this messaging arena. And I think that this is where this war, so to speak, is being fought. I mean, you can have great politicians in the Democratic Party, and if they can't get their message out or they can't convince people or persuade people because they don't have the messaging apparatus to do so, it doesn't matter. And so you can have the most virtuous people in the world doing the best work in the world, but if all it takes is Donald Trump saying, that the Republicans are doing what the Democrats are doing, like he's been doing, where he beats his chest over this idea that he's some champion for earned benefits, even though he's cut Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security in every single one of his budgets. If we don't have the messaging apparatus to get that out, it's going to count for nothing. All that good work is going to count for nothing. And so it's incumbent on the Democrats to see the media ecosystem as it's laid out today. And for so long, we've relied on the mainstream media to be a mouthpiece for the left. But in fact, the mainstream media not only isn't left-wing media, they will bend over backwards to prove that they're not left-wing media. And so that's why we're left with Hillary's emails, for example, which was on the front page of the New York Times something like 69 times, all in an effort to prove to Republicans, look, we told you we're not the left-wing media. We told you we're not the liberal media, and we'll even allow you to be our assignment editors. And so there is this asymmetry at play right now where you've got Fox News and Newsmax, OAN, Steve Bannon's show, Alex Jones's show, Ben Shapiro's outlet, and those are basically propaganda arms of the Republican Party. They are there to see the Republicans win. Meanwhile, the mainstream media, again, is not there to see Democrats win. They are there to try to present themselves, even to an unfair degree, as the both sides media. And so we need to rebalance the political landscape here. We need to embrace, this is my contention, is we need to embrace either independent media, progressive media that is there to espouse the values of progressive policy and the people who actually are working to get it passed.
Yeah, the GOP has worked the refs so well when it comes to media that media feels, as you suggested, that they have to extend themselves and bend over backwards, use your words, to kind of establish, hey, we're not in the tank for the Dems. In your book, as I recall, you do something which really lays it out starkly. And I think it's the Obama, what if Obama did this? At one point, and you lay out in your book sort of the way in which the media does look the other way and really doesn't hold accountable any number of things that Obama, for example, never could have gotten away with.
Right. I mean, if you look at anything that we're looking at today, I think there's a point in the book where I try to do a footnote and said, what if Obama did this? And I did a little asterisk because I gave one or two examples, and the footnote includes another 50 or 60 examples of things that Donald Trump has actually done that if Obama did it, I mean, it would be the only story from here until eternity. But there is this sense that, okay, because Republicans are so graded on a curve that it's just baked into the cake that if they deny the outcome of a free and fair election, well, that's just what they're going to do. And so they don't even cover it anymore because it's not sexy, because it's been established that this is who Republicans are. And so only when something exceeds that are they going to cover it. But otherwise, if they're just going to do plain old election denialism, if they're just going to do the regular subversion of democracy stuff, we don't really have to cover that because they've been doing that for years. And so there is that massive asymmetry where the same rules still apply to Democrats. They'll still face the exact same amount of scrutiny no matter what they do. If somebody misplaces a modifier on the left, they're still going to cover it on a daily basis. But meanwhile, if you have Republicans outright destroying the democratic process or breaking down our institutions, then that just doesn't get covered because we've already been there. And so it's just kind of baked into the cake again that it's going to happen.
And, destroying the democratic process and breaking down these institutions, this is a real thing that you discuss in your book. And again, the book is shameless. We'll have a link to it underneath this video and across the podcast platforms where the show's heard. But you talk about the fact that there is a sense of a personal branding with politicians of today, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, for example. These people are just kind of, rhetorical terrorists. They go in and they're just not really doing anything but building their own brand. And you talk about guardrails that are within the general setup of government, so that these people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, who are just sort of irresponsible, as I say, brand builders, can just run amok with the understanding that these guardrails exist that will more or less keep government on track, but how those guardrails essentially are melting away.
They are. And that's the danger, is that all of a sudden the provocateurs and instigators and flamethrowers and shit talkers aren't just that. They're not just there to basically be rhetorical terrorists, as you say. They actually can wield some real power, and there is no more incentive structure for the Mitt Romneys and the Liz Cheneys and the Adam Kinzingers of the party to come in and kind of keep things on track. Now those people are going away, and they're being replaced by people who, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who are actually garnering real power. And that's the worry moving forward, is that the fewer and fewer guardrails that are in place, the more likely it is that there won't be anyone there to basically hold true to the very thing that, the very glue that holds our democracy together.
You know, among the things that you speak of in sort of setting the stage for where we are now was the obstructionism that really was born of Obama. When Obama's inauguration happened, it was concurrent with a meeting that happened, sort of a big, what do we do now type meeting with Frank Luntz, and I think Gingrich was there also, as you say. And I wonder if you could just, because that was the beginning of, we're going to just hold the line and not allow anything to happen. Anything Obama wants, we're going to block.
It was the beginning of the end of any semblance of a functioning government. Republicans viewed themselves not as being there to help their constituents or get legislation passed. Now it was about the consolidation of power for themselves. And so if they were to help Obama, who, by the way, came into office very much hoping to work with Republicans, that was one of the core tenets of what he was looking to do, was establish some sense of unity. And by the way, this is a theme. We saw Joe Biden do the exact same thing. So that should also put on full display the asymmetry at play here. But Obama came in hoping to work with Republicans. Republicans knew that if Obama was successful at passing any legislation, which inherently would require their help, that would reflect well on him. And because it wasn't about passing legislation, it was just about the consolidation of power, or getting back into power, since they were, in no man's land of politics. They had just been handily routed at the ballot box. That was going to require not doing anything that would allow Obama to gain credit for any legislation passing or any accomplishments whatsoever. And so instead, now the Gingriches of the world recognize that our sole job here has to be to destroy the presidency of Barack Obama. We've even heard, I think it was Mitch McConnell who came out and said our goal is to make Barack Obama a one-term president. That shouldn't be the goal of a whole half of the government, to destroy the government from within, to reflect poorly on the governing party so that you could then swoop in and take power. But that's where it began, and it hasn't changed much today. In fact, it's only gotten exponentially worse. The fact that we can look back at that day in 2009 and feel a sense of quaint nostalgia for when it was just that bad is a testament to how things have unraveled since then.
Well, the naked obstructionism, I think, was on display with the Supreme Court, and Mitch McConnell holding that seat open with Obama not even getting a hearing as to the nominee. And
that was the hard part for me. And that's actually where, in large part, the title of the book, Shameless, came from. And I was wondering myself, how do you even contend with a party that has no shame? I mean, like we try to call them out, for example, and hope that they'll be shamed into acting in a way that at least shows some integrity. But it really doesn't work anymore. And I think that they're beyond that. And so a large part of what I seek to do is then say, okay, instead of just trying to continue conferring onto these people some goodwill in hopes that they'll reciprocate it, and just, it's basically like Lucy pulling the football away from Charlie Brown every single time. Like, we just hope that, like, okay, we're going to be good governing partners for you, but you got to do it back. And it never happens. And so instead of just waiting for this elusive reciprocation of goodwill, instead we just have to build up our media infrastructure, build up the foundation of democratic messaging, do what we can to get our message out, and just go right to the American people and say, look, this is not a good, the Republican Party is not there to govern with us. They're not there to be a partner in government with us. So at this point, we just have to make sure that we win so that we can actually get stuff done. And in terms of the disparity on display, Because I know that Republicans' goal here is to prove that government doesn't work. And then they will use that as a way to show the American people, okay, you need to shrink government down. And we're the party that wants to shrink government down, so vote for us. And so they'll break government to point to the thing that they just broke as evidence that they should then be in power. So it's this vicious cycle.
Bravo. That's so well said. Yeah. And they point to mainstream media too, didn't mean to interrupt, but it's mainstream media is against you and government's against you. You know, I think there's a lot of that right now in the culture.
But the antidote to that is to look at what Democrats have actually done with their time in power. With the same margin in the House that Republicans had in the previous cycle, so just a few seats, Democrats were able to pass the Inflation Reduction Act, the American Rescue Plan, the CHIPS Act, the PACT Act, the Infrastructure Law, the Gun Safety Law, the Violence Against Women Act. Marriage equality was codified into federal law. They added 16 million jobs, and they brought the unemployment rate down to a 40-year low. So they don't want anybody to know that, because then that would defeat their thesis of this idea that government can work. But in fact, it can work when you have people in power who want it to work. And so our job, though, is to make sure that Americans know what Democrats are doing with their time in power, giving them a reason to vote for them again, so that it's not just relying on the pendulum swinging back and forth. And okay, after we have George Bush, then we can have a Democratic president. After we have Donald Trump, then we can have a Democratic president. It can't just be that. There has to be a reason to affirmatively vote for Democrats. And until now, we really haven't had a media ecosystem that's able to do that, that's able to espouse the virtues of progressive policy and what it's been able to do for this country. It hasn't been put on full display the extent to which the last 3 Republican presidents have been worse on the economy than the subsequent Democratic presidents, that there hasn't been a single Republican administration in my lifetime that's created more jobs than a Democratic administration. There hasn't been a single Republican administration in my lifetime that's left office with a lower unemployment rate than a Democratic administration. That the last 3 Republican administrations have left office with a recession, and the last 3 Democratic presidents have cleaned up the mess that was left for them by their predecessors. So the more that we can get this messaging out, and this is not the equivalent of right-wing media because that media is steeped in lies, but the more we can get this message out in a way that's virtuous and honest and just details what's happening, I think the better off we'll be at actually keeping power and there being an incentive to do good governorship.
That's just a great way. We only have another minute, and I think on that point, Biden was so accomplished, as you sort of suggested. It was a successful administration from the standpoint of governing with that very thin majority. That said, he was a limited campaigner. He couldn't message for all the reasons that we already know. Right. Now you have Kamala Harris. She seems to have put together this is a buff team she's put together, Brian. This isn't like when she was running for, when she was in the primaries. Yeah. This is the buff team that can probably message very effectively on some of these things you talk about.
And she's showing that right now. I mean, she is able to prosecute the case for a second Democratic term especially effectively. And there are 2 reasons why she's uniquely positioned as a good candidate to do that. The first is that she's spent her career as a prosecutor, and she's running against a 34-time convicted felon. So right there, I mean, as if Donald Trump being a felon isn't already disqualifying enough. Now you have somebody who has spent her career putting away scumbags, liars, con men, cheats, grifters, frauds, and sexual deviants like Donald Trump. So that's the first tack there. And it's one that she's really leaning into, and good on her for doing so. The second is that her main issue when she was vice president was that she was crisscrossing the country talking about the virtues of protecting women's reproductive rights. Donald Trump has beat his chest over and over about the fact that he appointed a third of the Supreme Court that would gut Roe. And this is an issue on which Republicans have lost in election cycle after election cycle, 2022, 2023, in states like Ohio and Virginia, Kentucky, Kansas, Alabama. So this is already a terrible issue for the Republicans as it relates to abortion rights. And the fact that Trump keeps leaning into this issue is really not doing him any favors. And that's, of course, which is to say nothing of the rest of the Democratic agenda, which is objectively more popular than the agenda that Republicans are running on. And that is expanding healthcare and protecting the ACA. That is making sure that kids are safer in schools because we have common sense gun safety reforms. That's workers' rights and union rights and protecting climate change and combating climate change. So on issue after issue, Kamala Harris has shown herself a very effective messenger on all of this and kind of, again, uniquely positioned to be running against someone like Trump.
Yeah, and I just hope that the American people vote on issues because, as you know, they vote on a lot of things not necessarily related to issues. All right, that's our time. I didn't even get to all the great people you talked to in the book, and the Jamie Raskin. He wrote the introduction, right?
Jamie Raskin wrote the foreword. Yeah, real quick story on that. There have been a few interviews in my career that I've been especially nervous. Interviewing President Biden in the White House was one of them. I remember sitting there and my heart was pounding, and I just told myself, if I can get to the first question, if I can get over the hump of the first question, I'll be fine. Asking Jamie Raskin to write the foreword for this book was probably the second most nervous that I ever was, because I really wanted him to write it. From the second that the book deal was signed, I was like, okay, I want Jamie to write the foreword. And he's always been such a big hero of mine. And so I waited a long time because I knew the longer I waited, if he said no, I wouldn't have to sit with it as long. I was like, all right, well, if I wait another month, that's 1 month less in my life that I'll have to deal with the reality that Jamie didn't write the foreword. But to his credit, he wrote it, and he was so kind in doing so.
He's a brilliant guy. We went to the same high school. That's my big Jamie.
In Maryland, yeah.
But he's brilliant, and your book is terrific, pal. Congratulations on it. Wish you the best. There's a link to it again, just to reiterate, underneath this video, and wherever you're listening to this podcast, there'll be a link as well. I hope you'll come back and visit, and we'll talk again. Thanks again, pal.
I would love that. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, Brian Tyler Cohen.
The Mark Thompson Show. The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
It's the Mark Thompson Show. What a treat to get a taste of Mark Thompson on this Friday. Welcome to the live portion of this show. Mark will be back on Monday, but we have a lot to talk about. We've got a great Friday Fabulous Florida coming up. Michael Schur will be here, and the Culture Blaster, Michael Snyder, will be here as well. Before we get to these things, I do want to acknowledge some of the lovely contributions that have come into the show. Jan Fada throwing down $10, saying $10 for having Brian Tyler Cohen on. Thank you. Karen says it's great to see Brian Tyler Cohen. He was on the Bulwark podcast recently too, and he's great. Yeah, we're really excited to have him on the show as well. No Contendo. I'm not quite sure if I agree with this, but he writes, 45 denies, ignores his daughter Tiffany, family values. I wonder though, No Contendo, if perhaps Tiffany is the smart one in the group and just really doesn't want to be in the limelight connected to all of this. I don't know. Or maybe it's as you say. No Contendo also with the $2 contribution saying, AI PAC just allow Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert a slide versus Brown Bush. And I have no idea what that means, but thank you for the contribution and for participating in the show. Okay, so I don't know if you guys saw the weird press conference yesterday, and I legitimately think it was weird. It was from the Trump Golf Clubhouse in Bedminster, New Jersey, and I watched painfully the entire thing. The whole point of it was for Trump to come out and talk about the economy. And so he walks out to these tables filled with grocery store items. I think there were Cheerios, cereal, all kinds of things on one side. On the other side, there's a house to talk about housing prices. He kind of did a little bit. We got a little bit of talking about the economy, but it wasn't him talking necessarily about what he would do for the economy. It was him tearing down Kamala Harris and President Biden for what he says, have done to the economy. So it's not exactly, I think, what some were looking for from him, as far as, focusing inward on himself and what he would do. The insults continued, and then it was the ranting that continued. Have you ever talked to an older person, and it's clear that they want to share stories from their glory days with you? And that's fine, because those are their good memories, and those are the things they want to highlight about themselves. That's what it felt like. Him talking about the past in a time when most of the people in the Republican Party, or the people that are speaking out, including Nikki Haley, are saying we need to move forward. We need to look at the future, talk about policy, talk about what you will do, not what happened in the past. He spent a lot of time talking about Hillary Clinton and that election. And I mean, it was the ramblings of an old guy in a wheelchair on the front lawn. That's what it sounded like. Of course, he wasn't in a wheelchair, but that's how it felt to me. Just this angry old guy. And maybe that's how most of America is seeing it. And maybe that's why Kamala Harris seems to be rising in the polls, in addition to presenting all the things that she will do. And today, she's expected to talk about the economy. What we will hear from Kamala Harris, according to her advisors, is some innovative new ideas. Now, I don't know what you think about it, but at least she's proposing some ideas, some ways that perhaps things could be changed. Her campaign says she'll be offering $25,000 in down payment support for first-time home buyers. If you can show that you've paid your rent on time for 2 years and you want to buy a home, she'll give you $25,000 to put down to buy one. She also is expected to propose a ban on price gouging by food companies and incentives to build new housing and expand significantly the child tax credit. Part of what she's been talking about of ways that she plans to lift families, to help American families. So we'll hear more from her today, but that's kind of the outline of what she plans to talk about, which is completely different from what we heard from Trump yesterday on the golf course lawn. So I don't know. Let's take a look, though, at the ramblings of yesterday. And again, more attacks. I think Tony's got some video to show us.
I'm very angry at her that she'd weaponized the justice system against me and other people. Very angry at her. I think I'm entitled to personal attacks. I don't have a lot of respect for her. I don't have a lot of respect for her intelligence. And I think she'll be a terrible president. Whether the personal attacks are good, bad, I mean, she certainly attacks me personally. She actually called me weird. He's weird. It was just a soundbite. And she called JD and I weird. She's weird in her policy. Some people say, oh, why don't you be nice? But they're not nice to me. They want to put me in prison.
Yeah, a lot of talking about prison. I don't know if it's because he's scared of it or what, but there was a lot of talking about prison. He talked about the gag order, went on and on, just kind of skirting around all the edges. Very interesting to watch. Exhausting and interesting at the same time. So, one of the things that we talked about yesterday on the show, Mark sat down with Bob Christian, who's running for Congress in Georgia, and they talked about ways in which voters are being disenfranchised in Georgia and in other states. And then I saw this piece with Stacey Abrams on MSNBC, and she really has a lot to say about these types of tactics and what's happening in Georgia and why it's really important for all of us to watch for this, to make sure that it doesn't happen and to call it out when we do see it. It's a strategy, apparently, that the Republicans are putting into place for this election, the not having people in place that won't certify elections and other things. Let's take a look at this video.
J.D. Vance, as is his bent, misrepresents, misunderstands, and misappropriates information to make himself look or feel better and to try to excuse terrible decisions that he makes. What I said and what I mean is that women should have the right to control their bodies because it determines how they secure an education, how they make a living, how they decide to grow families.
Yeah. And it's very important when we're looking at this and we're looking at the integrity of our elections. Tony?
Sorry, I'll cue up to I missed the cue point. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. We'll take a look at it again. She says a lot more about the preserving our election integrity here.
voting access hat for a second. If you could talk to me about your level of trepidation about actual election day, given the fact that I believe the Georgia legislature, the election board in Georgia, just passed 2 rules, one of which allows election officials, some of whom are very MAGAfied and are election deniers themselves, to arbitrarily refuse to certify election results. And therefore, opens the door to a lot of chicanery in terms of certifying the statewide results. What's your level of concern about that as we barrel towards Election Day?
It's deep concern, but it's a deep concern that I've held for several years. This is Brian Kemp's baby. If this is his state election board, he signed the laws that have given this elections board the ability to run amok, to refuse to not only certify elections, but to enable mass challenges at the county level. We have a Secretary of State that has a cancel your voter registration website that has unfortunately violated access to data privacy at least once that we know of. And so I want us to understand that the fight in Georgia is a fight to protect and defend the right to vote. I'm so proud of the work that Fair Fight continues to do, working with allies across the state and around the country to lift up what's at stake. I'm not optimistic. I am determined. I believe that we can get this done because we've done it before. And we didn't do so ignoring the reality of voter suppression. We did so by calling it out, by confronting it, by making certain that voters understood all of their rights, and by doing what we could to raise public alarm. And while this is happening in Georgia, we've got to be watching states across the country that are going to face similar challenges. Voter suppression remains one of the top tools the Republicans use in order to win elections. And we've got to push back by demanding free and fair elections where we can. And so while I am very bullish on the capacity of Vice President Harris to win Georgia, I know it's only going to happen if we do the work necessary to raise the alarm, but also to hold accountable Governor Kemp, Secretary of State Raffensperger, and that state election board that wants to have the ability with impunity to actually decertify election results. This is not just a MAGA playbook. This is a Republican playbook because Republicans right now can demand better action in the state of Georgia. They're refusing to because they are triangulating. They want to have credit for not committing treason in 2020, but they want the benefit of not having to certify elections in 2024. We have to hold everyone accountable for free and fair elections, starting at the top.
And how sad is it that instead of just winning on the issues and winning the election, they've got to play games in order to win, trying to tinker around the edges with everything in order to tilt the balance in their favor. I would argue those things that are being done to disenfranchise voters are wholly un-American. You're supposed to encourage us to vote. Our vote is supposed to count for something. And instead, look at the games that are being played under the table where they're hoping people won't notice. It's outrageous. So I'm glad that Stacey Abrams appeared on MSNBC. I'm glad she's calling out those who would make people feel like their vote doesn't matter, it doesn't count, and who basically, it looks like, are cheating. We don't want to win by cheating. It's so interesting. Consistently, every time Trump points the finger at someone else and says, look what they're doing, it's because he's doing it. We've talked about this before. When he says they stole the election, it means he's trying to steal the election. Because that's what he would do. Bunch of cheaters, I'll tell you. All right, Tony, we're not going to have time for Friday Fabulous Florida if we don't get right to it. Let's make it.
Give me 1 second.
All right, let's make it happen.
Dang it. I'm totally ready. Always ready.
It's time for Friday Fabulous Florida.
There is a gigantic alligator in my kitchen.
A look at the weirdest stories from our weirdest state.
Now, if someone's going to rip you off, at least they feel bad about it. That's what happened in Port Orange. This Florida man apologized while snatching a lady's purse at the Port Orange CVS. I'm sorry, he said. He's been booked into jail. His name is Charles Nelson. In Volusia County, he's in jail. Police say he snatched the purses from 2 women in Port Orange, one a 77-year-old lady, one 64. One of the women said he jumped at her in the CVS parking lot. She said, when I left the store, he was parked right there. He'd backed in. I didn't notice him at the time. I went across to my car and I was getting in, and he ran huffing and puffing at about 9:30 in the morning on Monday. She said she got a look at his face before he allegedly grabbed the purse from her shoulder. She said he was trying to take my purse, and I was so shocked that I wasn't trying to give it to him. So he knocked me over and I still had the purse, and then he pulled the purse really hard. She said she fell to the ground, and before he ran away, he said, "I'm sorry, ma'am." Wow. Police said very fortunately that he didn't get far. They were able to catch him quickly. He confessed to both purse snatchings, along with another one in South Daytona. She said, the woman there said, he threw my stuff behind a place called Pagano's Restaurant. The officers went to get it. She said so she was able to get her stuff back. From now on, she plans to carry mace. Never thought something like this would happen to her. So there he is. He's he's the apologetic purse snatcher. What do you think? I know we have a thing in the middle of his face, but I like that he was sorry at least. I'm going to give him a 7. What do you think, Tony?
I mean, it's kind of a boring, you
just run of the mill. Yeah. I'm giving him a 7 because he apologized.
Patchy beard. It's like, come on, man. Throw it in a little better.
This next story involves a fatality, but this man was so upset that he got kicked out of a strip club that he decided to go back, get a truck, and drive it into a group of people right in the front, a semi-truck into a strip club after he got kicked out. This man has been arrested. He injured 2 people, killed 1 person at the Emperor's Gentlemen's Club. It happened at about 4:30 in the morning Tuesday after this man, identified as 25-year-old Dylan Fogel, drove a truck through a group of people right outside the Emperor's Gentlemen's Club and then rolled into the club. Witnesses told police Mr. Fogel had been kicked out of the establishment, then returned to drive this semi-truck into a group of people standing right at the entrance. He was hospitalized in critical condition. Police say this is an unbelievably tragic and completely avoidable incident. So sad. He's been now charged with first-degree murder, 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder, vehicular homicide, DUI with serious injury, etc. I guess, get really angry when you get kicked out of the strip club. Here's a lady who didn't really want to pay the so-called high prices at Target. This Florida woman arrested after swapping price tags in a Target shoplifting scheme. Oh, ma'am. No, it's not good. This Florida woman was taken to jail after she stole nearly $300 worth of items from a Target store last week. Her name is Carla Nishikura. She's 39. She was arrested on charges of shoplifting, scheme to defraud, and violation of probation, according to the Flagler County Sheriff's Office. It was a little after 6 p.m. on Friday when deputies responded to a shoplifting incident at the Target store in Palm Coast. They spoke with the store's loss prevention officer, who reported seeing this lady, Nishikura, removing price tags from clothing items and replacing them with cheaper price tags. She allegedly took a price tag from a pencil box and placed it over a Lego set, along with adding other items to her cart. Then she went to the self-checkout, according to police, where she only scanned 5 of the 12 items in her cart, for a grand total of $19.50. But the real total should have been $268.48. So she left the store without paying for the other 7 items, according to police. The loss prevention folks take her into the office, and then the police arrive. She, they say, apparently likes the 5-finger discounts doesn't want to pay for items like the rest of us do, according to Sheriff Rick Staley. We won't allow shoplifting in Flagler County, so hopefully she's learning her lesson while spending some time in the Green Roof Inn. I guess that's their jail. Okay. Not the first time this woman has been caught shoplifting at Target. She was caught in 2023, and she's on a 12-month probation for an incident in that year as well. She looks like kind of a sad sack, Tony. I don't know. I'm going to give her a 5. A 5 for the shoplifter. What do you think?
Well, I gotta chat. That neck tat puts her up a bit.
Yeah.
The neck tattoo push up to probably a 7.5.
That's a 7 for you. Okay.
Oh, the neck tat carries a long way for Florida, right?
She has this look on her face that's like, I don't know if it's a look of regret or anger.
There's probably regret because she got caught because it wasn't even very good shoplifting she did, you know?
Yeah.
It's just like, nah.
They are snake wrestling in the Everglades. They have a 10-day challenge in Florida that's all about getting rid of these pythons in the Everglades. It's a 10-day challenge, and it's the annual Florida Python Challenge. So people go out to the Everglades and they track down these invasive Burmese pythons, and it's all part of an effort to get a share of $30,000 in prizes. It's a 10-day hunt. They've been doing it for at least 10 years. And it's meant to get rid of these snakes, these giant Burmese pythons in the Everglades. So these people go out and they do this. This year, more than 600 people registered for the snake hunting event. 2 people came from Canada to do it. 108 people came from other states. It is a uniquely Florida event in Western Broward County. So there you go. The snake Burmese python event. Florida. The folks at Disneyland say anyone who signed up for Disney Plus is no longer allowed to sue. This came about because of a wrongful death lawsuit. This man had an allergic reaction at an Irish pub in Disney Springs in October. And he's a 42-year-old man. He's a New York doctor. So he goes to this Irish pub at Disney World or Disney Springs, and he has this allergic reaction and he does not survive it. So they've brought a wrongful death lawsuit against this Irish pub and against Disney. Disney wants the Florida court to dismiss the lawsuit because they say the family had signed up for Disney Plus. And in the subscriber agreement with Disney Plus, it includes binding arbitration clause. The very first page of the subscriber agreement says, all in capital letters, any dispute between you and us, except for small claims, is subject to a class action waiver and must be resolved by individual binding arbitration. That means if you signed up for Disney Plus, you can't sue. The family's lawyer.
Well, it's because Disney, everything's under one app. So to get to the park, to do the TV, everything is under one agreement is what they're doing. They're trying.
Which is interesting because when you sign up for Disney Plus, you're thinking
you're
signing
he
up.
Just did the trial of Disney Plus.
Well, when you sign up for Disney Plus, you feel like you're signing up for a streaming service. You're not thinking about anything that could happen at Disneyland or Disney World.
But it's all built into one app. The parks and everything are all built into one. It's a one unifying thing they have now. So
who knew?
The
family.
Awful.
It is. The family says their lawyer is arguing it's absurd to believe that more than 150 million subscribers to Disney Plus have waived all rights to sue the company and its affiliates in perpetuity, even if their case has nothing to do with this popular streaming service.
And all park goers all agree to that arbitration.
What, when they buy the ticket?
Mm-hmm. That's all part of the same app. It's all part of the same thing. That's what it is. It's the park goers, street, everything. It's all under one thing.
Disney has some good lawyers right there.
We'll see.
Yeah, we will.
I think it's too late. It's now in the public of they're doing what? So now it's yeah.
Wild. Let's go back to the strip club, Tony. There is a stripper, or a former stripper, who is suing the state of Florida over new age requirements for workers at adult entertainment businesses. So the new law says you've got to be 21 years or older in order to be a stripper, adult actress, dancer, whatever, at these strip clubs. So that means the people that were between the ages of 18, so they were legal at the time, up to 21, 18, 19, and 20, they're now out of a job. And one of them pretty upset and suing over it. This is a 19-year-old woman at the club where she worked as a stripper. She has been let go, saying she doesn't meet the age requirement at Cafe Risque. So now she's suing Florida's Attorney General and 2 local prosecutors to stop the enforcement of this new state law prohibiting adult entertainment businesses from employing people who are under the age of 21. She says it's violating her constitutional rights. Her name is Serenity Michelle Bushy. She says the lawsuit that cost her job at the Cafe Risque in Gainesville is not fair. It was meant to deter human trafficking, according to Florida lawmakers, but she is suing over this. She's seeking a permanent injunction stopping this law from being enforced, claiming that it violates her First Amendment right to free speech and the 14th Amendment right to equal protection. There are 8 other adult performers who are older than 18 but younger than 21 that can't work at Cafe Risque because of this lawsuit. We'll see. She says this is how she earns a living, through what she calls her art, by providing entertainment for the benefit and the enjoyment of the audience. She said, we have a clear legal right to engage in protected speech of this nature. The law, by the way, is not only in regards to the entertainment, but for DJs and waitresses and security guards who are older than 18 but younger than 21. So, yep, wants her job back at Cafe Risque. The high-ranking officials at the in South Florida at a fire rescue unit, busted. They're indicted in a drug theft case. These are folks that worked as a medical director of emergency medical services and as one of the people in charge of the flight nurses. Dr. Sandra Schwemmer, who's 72, and is the medical director of the Monroe County Fire Rescue and the Trauma Star Air Ambulance Service, and one of the division chiefs, Andrea Thompson, are now each facing multiple criminal charges in the Florida Keys. Thompson, who's 45, oversaw the EMS and Trauma Star Division. They were initially arrested a couple of years ago. The indictments came as authorities continue what has turned out to be a long-term investigation into the theft of narcotics from the Trauma Star program. There they are in better days. Man, there were narcotics missing, discrepancies in the controlled substances log, and officials and detectives there determined they were stealing morphine and Versed, and then altering and falsifying records in an attempt to conceal the thefts. One of them, according to police, admitted to stealing these drugs. Police say it underscores their commitment to holding public servants accountable for their actions. That it's a violation of public trust. That no one is above the law, especially those entrusted with public safety and the welfare of the community in Florida. Busted, and it's not looking good for either of them. There's I love Grady Judd. There's a suspect that I think we had talked about this guy previously, and he was the one that fell asleep, kind of was so allegedly drunk or drugged up that he passed out in the Taco Bell drive-thru. And the drive-through folks had to call the police, who had trouble waking him up. Finally, they get him out of the car and they arrest him. He gets out of jail and gets back into trouble. He is arrested for ambushing and robbing and shooting a couple after they hit a jackpot at a Tampa casino. Apparently, they say he followed this couple home to rob and shoot them after they won big at the Seminole Hard Rock Casino and Hotel. There's even door cam footage showing the moment that this couple was ambushed by these two suspects after what's being called their dream night at the casino turned into a nightmare. Let's take a look at what Sheriff Grady Judd had to say about one of the suspects. Before we do that, though, those are pretty good mugshots. I'm going to give them both a 7. What do you think? Josh says 6.8. Yeah. John Watson says 6 and 6.5. Maybe I went a little too high. I don't know. What do you think, Tony?
That just...
Yeah, there's what's in front of the doorway.
Did you want to play the
Yeah, let's see Sheriff Grady Judd.
Okay, give me 1 second to cue it up.
Yeah, you can do it. Sheriff Judd is so funny. So
I think it was $3,000. They were followed to their house by some criminals who shot them in order to rob them. Here's the one guy, Marcus Jenkins. He's 34. We had previously arrested Marcus Jenkins, Highway 92 East at the Taco Bell. I'd done some press on it. He was unresponsive in the drive-through lane. So the people at Taco Bell said, hey, we sell tacos and we can't do it with this guy's car parked here. So our deputies, who are the very greatest, showed up and said to their self, here is a fella passed out, couldn't wake him up, got fire there, finally got him awake. We arrested him. We arrested him for trafficking in fentanyl, marijuana, a public nuisance vehicle, resisting arrest, DUI, DWLSR, possession of identification from another. The bond was $25,000. We locked him up. He posted bond. Okay, he was arrested on July the 6th. He posted bond on July the 9th. And then he goes to Hillsborough County, follows the people from the Hard Rock, and shoots them in a robbery at their front doorstep. Well, the Lakeland Police Department worked with Hillsborough County because he lives in the city of Lakeland, and he was arrested there at his Lakeland home for the shooting in Hillsborough County. Okay. He's got 53 previous felony charges, 18 previous misdemeanor charges, for a total of 71 criminal charges. He's been to state prison 5 times. Did you hear what I said? 5 times. He's a slow learner.
That was gold, Tony. That's what I was looking for. He's a slow learner. I love that.
That's a bad man, dude.
Yeah, he's a slow learner, indeed. This is something also uniquely Florida. This cocaine package, the size of a microwave oven, covered with barnacles, was found off the coast of Florida. Yeah, they think it's been there for quite some time. Lots of cocaine there floating off the coast. The boaters found it. $625,000 worth of cocaine bobbing around off the Florida coast. It's quite a find. Floating in the Gulf of Mexico right near the Everglades, it was spotted on Monday. The Collier County Sheriff's Office says boaters found this 56-pound package, the size of a microwave oven, floating in mangroves off Panther Key near Port of the Islands. Inside, there were 25 individually wrapped kilograms of cocaine worth about $625,000. Deputies recovered the cocaine, which was covered in barnacles. They say it indicates the package had been in the water for quite a while. They said it was reminiscent of something called the square grouper marijuana smuggling days during the 70s and 80s, but that it's quite uncommon for today. They're trying to figure out where this cocaine originally came from. They say it most likely washed in with the tides, maybe from the East Coast due to recent storms. I don't know. The sheriff's office said the large packages of drugs in the microwave oven-sized package ranged from marijuana to hashish to cocaine. Well, they say that packages like this have been discovered floating in the waters off Miami and the Florida Keys. We know that their recent tests of sharks in this area have indicated that sharks have cocaine in their muscle and in their tissue. So, well, we can forget falling iguanas because Hurricane Debbie uncovered something else interesting in Florida. And Tony and I were talking about this before the show. He thinks that this is normal. I think I've never seen anything like this before. These are walking catfish. They apparently are seen sometimes during hurricane season. The catfish were washed up during Hurricane Debbie. The hurricane, after it made landfall, it resulted in major flooding. And so people were finding these catfish walking around on their front lawn, their walkways, in their backyards. People sharing video of this. Check it out. Apparently they can look at it. And there it goes. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of more like a wiggle, like a snake wiggle. But from what I understand, these walking catfish, they breathe air and they walk on their pectoral fins. They're native to freshwater in Southeast Asia, but they are found throughout Florida in swampy areas like the Everglades. This according to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission. And sometimes they're found in storm drainage systems, and that's where they may emerge during floods. So you can see them using their pectoral fins to walk, or sometimes swimming through floodwaters. While they don't have legs per se, they walk or move in this S formation, like an eel or a snake, with these quick whip-like movements. People want to know, if we find them on our walkway, can we eat them? It is apparently illegal to possess or transport live walking catfish in Florida. They said fishermen will tell you immediately to put them on ice if you're going to try to eat them. They are considered a tasty fish in their native home, and they're fairly safe to eat, but they say, no, just gently carry them and put them back in the water where they go, and that should be it. Yeah, falling iguanas, alligators, walking catfish. I'm telling you, Florida is a heck of an interesting place. So let's go through it and vote for your favorite. First, we have the Florida man who apologized while stealing a woman's purse, allegedly, at Port Orange CVS parking lot. The man who drove a semi-truck into a strip club after getting kicked out. The woman arrested after switching the price tags, the old price tag switcheroo, at the Target in a shoplifting scheme. The snake hunting event in the Everglades, the Florida 10-day snake challenge. The stripper who sued Florida over her new age restrictions for the workers at the adult entertainment businesses. Disney, who says anyone who signed up for Disney Plus can't sue them. The high-ranking South Florida fire rescue officials caught, allegedly, pilfering drugs, including morphine and Versed. The man who fell asleep in the Taco Bell drive-thru went to prison and then was let out, only to allegedly try to steal somebody's jackpot from the Hard Rock Casino. The cocaine floating in the Everglades. Or the walking catfish. These are the choices. Tony, what is your favorite Friday Fabulous Florida story today?
Oh, to me, the one that was the most Florida. Snake guys.
The snake
Look
guys.
at those two. Come on. Look at them.
That's pretty funny. I'm gonna
But if
say,
you look at your chat, it is walking catfish all the way. It looks
walking
like
catfish. I kind of like the walking catfish too. I have to be honest, but I'm going for Sheriff Grady Judd, and he's a slow learner.
He's a slow learner.
The Hard Rock jackpot ambush. I'll go for that one. And that, my friends, is the beautiful, the amazing Friday Fabulous Florida.
This has been Friday Fabulous Florida.
There is a gigantic alligator in my kitchen.
Y'all come back now, here.
Well, we'll do a little bit of news as we await Michael Schur, and then we'll talk a little bit of politics with him. So let's get to it. Here's some news on The Mark Thompson Show. On The Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report is sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore, home of the Grape Stomp. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But first, we know now that Donald Trump and Kamala Harris will debate at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. ABC News hosts David Muir and Lindsay Davis moderating this event. The network hasn't said yet whether there will be an audience. This week, the Harris campaign said it agreed to another presidential debate in October as well. Former President Trump starting to announce the members of his transition team. Businessman Howard Lutnick and Linda McMahon, who was the head of the Small Business Administration during Trump's first term, are taking the lead. The pair will be involved in shaping policy and hiring personnel should Trump win. His vice presidential pick, Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio, will serve as an honorary chair, along with Trump's sons, Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr. Vice President Kamala Harris is coming to North Carolina today, where she's expected to present her economic policy. Her campaign says she'll be offering $25,000 in down payment support for first-time homebuyers. This proposal would provide working families that have paid their rent on time for 2 years up to $25,000 in down payment assistance. She'll also, or she's expected to, propose a ban on price gouging by food companies, along with incentives to build new housing and a significant expansion of the child tax credit. An escaped inmate in North Carolina, convicted of killing a 1-year-old captured by authorities on Friday. His name is Ramon Alston. They say he was able to get away from authorities on Tuesday because he was attending a medical appointment. They say another person was also arrested and charged with aiding and abetting a fugitive in that case. A record 8.5% of homes in America are worth $1 million or more. That according to real estate company Redfin. It attributes record home prices with a housing supply shortage. Redfin adds prices have shot up so much that many people are either priced out of the market or wary of committing to such high monthly payments. In California, a poll taken, UC Berkeley Institute of Governmental Studies poll, co-sponsored and published by the LA Times, shows Congressman Adam Schiff has the majority of support among likely voters in the Senate election that's to be held in November. The poll said Schiff was the preferred candidate of 53% of likely voters, compared to 33% for Republican Steve Garvey. Same question asked before the primary had Schiff at 53%, but Garvey at 38%. So that means the baseball stars lost 5% support since February. And following the Park Fire, the biggest wildfire burning in California this year, nearly 49% contained now as of early this morning. Firefighters have been working on this one for 3 weeks, trying to control this park fire. It has burned more than 429,000 acres in Butte and Tehama counties. Governor Gavin Newsom here in California wants oil companies to establish and maintain strategic oil reserves to ensure against price spikes when supply shortages happen. Governor Newsom is asking legislators to pass a bill that would mandate these reserves. UC Berkeley business professor Severin Bornstein says the plan won't be easy to implement, but Governor Newsom says California drivers would have saved millions of dollars during the last supply shortage had this plan been in place. Oil industry representatives counter state regulations and taxes are the reason that consumers pay so much for gas in California, and that this plan would actually increase prices at the pump even more. Who do you believe? The fossil fuel CEOs or Governor Gavin Newsom? I leave it to you. There is outrage growing among San Francisco crime victims after their cases got tossed. A state court ruled they had a certain time frame to go to trial, but they missed the window because of COVID delays. The pandemic caused a backlog, leading to about 70 cases being dismissed yesterday. Among them, DUI charges, sexual battery, deadly driving. The district attorney says the order stripped victims of justice and robbed defendants of their rights. An Oakland father remains on life support after being hit by a stray bullet. Police say a 20-year-old man fired a gun inside of an apartment 2 weeks ago and ended up shooting the man next door while he lay sleeping. The bullet passed through a wall into the headboard of the bed. Damon Roberts has been arrested and charged. He's a convicted felon. He wasn't supposed to have a gun. Police are still determining if that shooting was deliberate. A judge in Detroit, Michigan, facing some criticism for how he disciplined a teenager who fell asleep in his courtroom during a field trip. Judge Kenneth King reportedly ordered the 16-year-old to change into jail clothes and had her handcuffed. He then threatened the teen with jail time, even asking her peers if he should send her to a juvenile detention facility. Her mother said the incident left her daughter traumatized and that she was tired because she doesn't currently have her own bed to sleep in at night. The judge defended his actions, saying it's his own version of scared straight. This one for Michael Snyder, who's coming up at the end of the hour. Deadpool and Wolverine, now the highest grossing R-rated film of all time. It has passed Joker on Thursday, made $1 billion, $1,086 million rather, during its theatrical run. Those are the only R-rated films to ever cross the $1 billion mark. So Deadpool and Wolverine is projected to finish its run between $1.2 and $1.3 billion. And that is quite a lot. Wow. There's a UFC preview taking place on Saturday in Australia. It'll involve the middleweight champion Dricus du Plessis and former middleweight champion Israel Adesanya. It'll be interesting to see. It'll take place at an arena in Perth, and apparently people are looking forward to this a lot. And lastly, pumpkin spice's early arrival is ushering in the unofficial start of the fall season. Is it not still summer? This starts earlier and earlier every year as a Halloween push known as...
Halloween starts in August now.
Apparently, it's called Summerween. Did you know this?
Yeah, that's...
Summerween ushers in the pumpkin spice season for many retailers. According to Yahoo Finance, the global pumpkin spice market, valued at $1.1 billion in 2023, is on pace to soar to $2.4 billion by 2031. The pumpkin spice craze was born 21 years ago when Starbucks debuted its pumpkin spice latte. The dates of the season change every year, but the products have been available for several weeks now at grocery stores, as it is Summerween. This report is sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore. They've got some exciting events going on, including the Grape Stomp. And I think we have video, Tony, of what's going on. These are events that you can sign up for. Take your friends, take your family, head on out to Tenuta Vineyards and participate in this really fun event. You can find it at the website TenutaWinery.com. And really fun. Look at people out there. They say it feels like squishy brains, but people have a great time doing this. You can check it out at the website TenutaWinery.com. And if you do sign up for this event, if you do go to the website TenutaWinery.com and find some wine that you think you'd like to try, you get 10% across the board just for being a Mark Thompson Show listener. That's right. All you have to do is use the so-called phrase that pays, and it is smash it with your iron rod. You send it in an email out to Rich at the winery, rich@tenutavineyard.com, or you can call him 925-699-4576. Say smash it with your iron rod, and he'll give you 10% off your total. And that includes everything that is offered at Tenuta Winery. Our huge thanks to them for supporting the Mark Thompson Show. And again, I still love the Mark Thompson Why Are You Yelling Red? I count it among my favorites. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
What he's got going here is a situation.
It's unbelievably offensive.
Put up your pants, my man. Pull up those pants.
Ralph Nader just sent me a book. Did he send you one too?
I offer this sincere apology to you today.
Everything is going extremely well.
Calling me a liar? Is that what you call him?
You, sir, are a liar.
You are a cover-up artist, and you are a liar.
Liar, liar, your pants are on fire!
Google told me.
Can you let him finish, sir? It was wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
No, no, no.
I'm going to tell you what I think.
What do the porn stars do with Mark?
Do you have a secret talent?
Doesn't anybody but a weed?
100% effective, how about that?
Say what?
And this is their new host.
There is no defense for my conduct.
I misspoke. I stand corrected.
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
Time's up, mother effers.
Thompson Show. I'm Kim McAllister, in for Mark Thompson. Mark will be back on Monday. We're supposed to have Michael Schur right now, and for some reason he's not popping in, but still have a lot to talk about because right now Vice President Kamala Harris is in North Carolina laying out some economic policies for people. She's been criticized for running this campaign based on hope and momentum, and that maybe she's been a little short on policy. So today, we're hearing from her what some of her plans are. She doesn't say how she's going to pay for these things, but here are some of the things that she's talking about. An economic plan, she says, will benefit millions of Americans. One of the things she says is that she's promising to build 3 million new homes by the end of her first term. She says the United States is facing a serious housing shortage. She's vowed to address it, if she's elected, by building 3 million homes that are affordable by the middle class by the end of her first term. She said, as president, she will work... Oh, do we have the sound? Let's listen.
I will address in greater detail my plans to build an opportunity economy. And today, I will focus on one element that's on the minds of many Americans as they pay their bills at the kitchen table or walk the aisles of a grocery store. And that is lowering the cost of living.
Can you pause it for just a minute, Tony? I feel like when she talks about high prices at the grocery store, it means she's listening to the concerns of the American voter. It means that she hears that people are tired of struggling and the shock factor when they come out of the grocery store, because it's true that prices are higher. So the fact that she's hearing this and addressing it, I think is really big, because you don't see very many other candidates doing this as well. Let's hear more, Tony.
Every day across our nation, families talk about their plans for the future, their ambitions, their aspirations for themselves, for their children. And they talk about how they're going to be able to actually achieve them financially. Because look, the bills add up. Food, rent, gas, back to school clothes, prescription medication. After all that, for many families, there's not much left at the end of the month. I grew up in a middle-class household. For most of my childhood, we were renters. My mother saved for well over a decade to buy a home. I was a teenager when that day finally came, and I can remember so well how excited she was. I kind of understood what it meant, but we called her Mommy. Mommy was so excited, it just made us excited that she was so excited. Later in college, I worked at McDonald's to earn spending money. Well, some of the people I worked with were raising families on that paycheck. They worked second or even third jobs to pay rent and buy food. That only gets harder when the cost of living goes up. When I am elected president, I will make it a top priority to bring down costs and increase economic security for all Americans.
Thank you, Tony. Very good. One of the things she's saying is that as president, she'll work in partnership with industry to build the housing that's needed, both for people to rent and to buy. She said she plans to take down barriers, cut red tape, including at both the state and the local levels. She said by the end of her first term that we will end America's housing shortage by building 3 million new homes and rentals that are affordable for the middle class. She talked today about giving $25,000 to first-time homebuyers for down payments. She said, we know that the price of housing has gone up and the size of down payments has gone up as well. Even aspiring homeowners save for years, and often, she said, it's still not enough. So the down payment assistance, she said, is aimed at more Americans experiencing the pride of homeownership and financial security that it represents and brings as well. What we know about that plan so far, according to CNN, is that it would the support would apply to working families who've paid their rent on time for at least 2 years, with more generous support for first-time home buyers. It would also provide a $10,000 tax credit for first-time home buyers. That's something that President Biden had proposed earlier this year as well. Vice President Kamala Harris says the plan would allow for more than 1 million first-time buyers per year. She says that she's also, and you heard her mention it here in this speech, she also says that she's going to tackle price gouging at grocery stores, that she's going to talk to food producers, and she's going to make sure that prices at grocery stores can stay at a reasonable level. That's what she said. I don't know how the president of the United States, whoever that person may be, can impact the price of ketchup, but she says she's going to try. So this is good. One thing she didn't necessarily do is distance herself from the economic policies of President Biden, but she added some new things as well. The other thing I wanted to talk to Michael Schur about is Democrats driving home really this connection between Trump and Project 2025. And we know that Trump has been trying to distance himself from Project 2025. But apparently, even the authors of Project 2025 say Trump is very supportive of this policy agenda. And there was this undercover reporter, his name is Russell Vought, and he is drafting, apparently, he told Russell Drought told an undercover reporter. So Russell Drought is actually one of the authors who helped write the Project 2025 policy agenda. And he was talking to this undercover reporter, and he said that he's drafting executive orders for Trump to deploy if he gets back into the White House. He said his right-wing think tank, the Center for Renewing America, has been drafting hundreds of executive orders that could be used to enact mass firings and the deportation of immigrants living here in America illegally. He said he would have no problem funneling this material to Trump. His quote is, "There are people like me that have his trust and that will be able to get it to him whatever position we're at," is what he said. The relationships will be there. The trust level will be there. So the new strategy, or if not new, a strategy by Democrats in this election is to highlight Project 2025's proposals, which restrict access to abortion, including medication for abortion, replacing federal workers with Trump loyalists, so just crashing the civil servants. Trump has said the authors of Project 2025 have no sway with him. But that's not what's being said in their circles. That's not it at all. So I don't think we should forget about that. Something Trump said recently is being criticized by people who are patriots and who have respect for the military. He was at a fundraiser, and he said that this civilian award that he gave the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is the nation's highest civilian honor, is much better than the Congressional Medal of Honor, which is the nation's highest military decoration. Why? Because he said soldiers who receive the Congressional Medal of Honor have to be severely injured or killed to receive it. So wouldn't you rather receive the one that you don't have to be injured or die to get? This is the way he's thinking. So this is why he says the civilian Medal of Honor is a much better deal. Is there video, Tony?
I have to say, Miriam, I watched Sheldon sitting so proud in the White House when we gave Miriam the Presidential Medal of Freedom. That's the highest award you can get as a civilian. It's the equivalent of the Congressional Medal of Honor, but civilian version. It's actually much better because everyone gets the Congressional Medal of Honor. That's soldiers. They're either in very bad shape because they've been hit so many times by bullets, or they're dead. She gets it, and she's a healthy, beautiful woman. It's right.
So a lot of people feel that's very disrespectful to members of the military who have received the Medal of Honor. As a matter of fact, there's a spokesperson for the Harris Walls campaign who says for him to insult Medal of Honor recipients, just as he has previously attacked Gold Star families, mocked prisoners of war, and referred to those who have lost their lives in the service to our country as suckers and losers, should remind all Americans that we owe it to our service members, our country, and our future to make sure that Donald Trump is never our nation's commander-in-chief again. He was talking about Miriam Adelson, who is the wife of one of his biggest donors. As a matter of fact, the Adelsons, spend nearly $100 million in this election cycle to support his bid. The thought was that Ms. Adelson got the Presidential Medal of Freedom in part because of the millions of dollars they donated to the Trump campaign the last time around. So, what is more valuable to you? Awarding the Presidential Medal of Freedom to someone who's donated a bunch of money, or looking at valor, or looking at the Medal of Honor recipients and the things that they have done in service to America. This is a person we're talking about becoming the commander-in-chief who consistently expresses blatant disregard for members of the military. It eludes me how so many members of the military can support this person. Even his number two, J.D. Vance, who's continually trying to tear down Minnesota Governor Tim Walz for his more than 2 decades of military service in the National Guard. There are a lot of things to maybe look at as far as Governor Walz when you look at his policies that you might not like. Maybe he's too liberal for you if you're ultra-conservative. But to focus on his military service seems not the best plan. This is a ticket, the Trump-Vance ticket, and Vance served 4 years in the Marine Corps. You would think that his mindset would be different. Trump, we know, full-on draft dodger, never served and has no respect for people who do. How putting him in charge in the military makes any sense, I'll never understand it. But we have both of them now who are really undercutting service to America, and I don't understand it. So a lot of people upset about what Trump said about the Congressional Medal of Honor and the recipients there, and how the civilian honor is much better. There's some changes, by the way, in the Trump campaign. He's bringing back Corey Lewandowski. Remember him? He's the former Trump advisor who took a plea deal in 2022 over allegations that he made some sexual advances to a GOP donor at an event in Las Vegas. Well, he's now back in with the campaign. He's advising the senior leadership team, according to Politico. He said at one point during the last election, and I would think that this would preclude him from ever being in Trump's orbit again. He knows it's over, Lewandowski said back in 2020 after that election. He just wants to create enough doubt about Biden's victory so that when he leaves, he can say he didn't lose and it wasn't stolen from him. Wow. But Trump is saying, yeah, come on back. And here he is. Next week, we've got the Democratic National Convention coming up. So there will be so much to talk about. And it's not going to just air on, as they say, mainstream media. The DNC 2024 will air on more than a dozen platforms. And that includes TikTok and Instagram and right here on YouTube as well. This happens in Chicago next week. And everywhere you go online, you will be able to see what's happening in the DNC. It'll be more than a dozen major platforms. It's going to be on Facebook, on X, on Prime Video. They say it's a first for the Democratic National Convention. This unprecedented number of ways to tune in to find it. I think that's really smart. They're hiring about 175 people. And their job is digital persuasion and mobilization. It includes everything from posting memes about what happened at the convention to responding to breaking news events. I think to tap into this is very, very wise. Because a lot of people are getting their information and their news in different ways. And so this really shows that they understand how this information is being consumed. They're going to broadcast it in English and Spanish, along with captions in both languages. They've got an American Sign Language specialist. They've got audio description services for the streaming partners as well. So I think it's good. I think it's good. Really good. Get it all out there. I mean, if you're going to hold an event like this, get the most bang for your buck, right? Yeah. Let's do a little news, Tony, and then we'll talk to Michael Snyder, assuming he makes it in. But first, we'll take a look at what is going on around the world here on The Mark Thompson Show. Vice President Kamala Harris, as we mentioned, is unveiling her economic policy if she wins the presidential race this November. In a speech from Raleigh, North Carolina today, Harris said bringing down the cost of living and ending the housing shortage will be priorities in her first 100 days in office. She advocated boosting the child tax credit, subsidizing first-time home buyers, and a federal ban on grocery store price gouging. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris will face off for the first time at Philadelphia's National Constitution Center. ABC News hosts David Muir and Lindsay Davis moderating the event. The network hasn't said whether there will be an audience or not. Meanwhile, vice presidential candidates J.D. Vance and Tim Walz will face off in a debate October 1st in New York, hosted by CBS News. President Biden says the Middle East is close to a ceasefire deal in Gaza. He told reporters in the Oval Office there's still work to do on any type of agreement on this. This comes as U.S. officials are in Qatar negotiating a deal. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will reportedly visit Israel on Sunday. All American Social Security information could be compromised. Reports say hackers stole data from the National Public Data and tried to sell it, but then posted it online for free. The group claims to have nearly 3 billion records of personal data from North America and the UK. Experts say the best course of action is to freeze your credit files to prevent others from signing up for credit cards or accounts in your name. Community activists who plan to protest during the Democratic National Convention are at odds with the Chicago mayor, Brandon Johnson, for making last-minute changes. An attorney representing the group filed an emergency injunction last night to stop the city from activating these restrictions. Organizers say the city wants them not to set up stages or platforms or install portable restrooms. They're banned from setting up tents or sound equipment. None of that. So the protesters are feeling pretty upset. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It is hands down the best tea you will ever have. The vanilla tea, the ginger mint tea, Earl Grey breakfast, all of it. So incredibly good. Loose leaf tea. I can't tell you how good it is. Mark loves the coffee, especially the cold brew. If you check the website, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, and you think, I'll try it, I'll see it, make sure you enter the code MARKT at checkout to get your 10% off. This is all hand-roasted coffee. The people there are incredibly kind and nice, and it's really worth giving it a shot. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Again, enter the code MARKT at checkout to get your exclusive Mark Thompson Show 10% off. Look at those people. They're so nice. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
There it is. I was muted. It is time to welcome in Michael Snyder. He is the Culture Blaster. He comes in every week. This is when you know Friday really kicks into gear. He's got movie reviews for us, sometimes talks a little streaming, maybe a little sports, some pop culture, some fun things to do. He comes and goes on a rainbow. It's Michael Snyder, everybody. Hi.
Hi, Kim. Always a pleasure to communicate with you and our wonderful, wonderful audience. And hope Mark is enjoying his time away. But I'm happy to be here with you. You know, I want to start things off by reclaiming the word weird from the weasels in the GOP. I mean, being weird has always been a badge of honor for me and my arty friends. I mean, consider the unofficial motto of a certain flagrantly progressive city, keep Portland weird, you know.
Right, exactly.
I mean, certain Republicans have the gall to try and act weird and wear the tag when they're actually just cruel, repressive jerks. And I'm not having it. I am proud to be a weirdo and an American. And in closing, I want to say, be truly weird, friends. Vote blue. Okay, I got that
But
off
I
my
think
chest.
there's good weird and bad weird. You're good weird, Michael Snyder.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And speaking of weirdness, let's get to the first movie on the docket for
Let's
review.
do it.
Did we need another installment in the Alien science fiction franchise? Did we?
Look at that. Ew.
I know. It kicked off so powerfully and chillingly in 1979 with Ridley Scott's spaceship as haunted house monster movie, Alien. And that was followed by James Cameron's equally scary and maybe even better 1986 sequel, Aliens. The films that followed were a mixed bag of sequels, prequels, and even a couple team-ups with another terror from outer space, The Predator. And a few were standouts, a couple not so great. As is evident, though, and we've talked about this before, Hollywood likes to monetize the tried and the true. So the ongoing success of these movies over a stretch of so many decades, we're talking 4 decades of Aliens movies, this is assured more projects. And of course, they feature artist H.R. Geiger's beautifully designed, quick-moving, near-invulnerable extraterrestrial killing machine and its rapidly multiplying spawn. So, here comes Alien Romulus, following 2017's pretty well-made prequel, Alien Covenant. And this one is pretty dang good as these things go. Like most of the movies in the series, it's impacted by the heedless greed of a future corporation that wants to research and profit off of the xenobiology of the alien creatures, despite the extreme danger they present to humanity. Oh, we don't care about that. If we can make some money, sure, a few lives lost, that's cool. It's collateral damage. Anyway.
That's believable, though, right?
Exactly. So, speaking of exploitation, Alien Romulus is set on a harsh mining planet controlled by your typical soulless corporate entity that mistreats its workers. A handful of these slaves to the system are impoverished young adults that seek a better life elsewhere. But in order to travel the light years to a friendly colony where they can start anew, they need cryogenic chambers and fuel, which they try to scavenge from a massive, seemingly abandoned spacecraft high above the mining planet. And by the way, ticking clock, it's got a decaying orbit. So the would-be immigrants include Rain, who's an orphaned woman whose parents died due to the brutal conditions on the planet. Her adopted synthetic brother, Andy, a somewhat damaged android who is programmed to be protective of Rain, plus her friend Tyler, who came up with the escape plan, Tyler's sister, their cousin, and another friend. Little do any of them know about the experiments that were in progress on the derelict ship under the auspices of the bottom-line obsessed Weyland-Yutani Corporation, well known from previous Alien movies. Of course, there are callbacks to earlier films in the series, one in particular that's aided by the magic of digital wizardry. And with all these youthful, fresh faces, there's a bit of a Alien 90210 vibe, you know? I mean, there's no grizzled space veterans running around on this thing. But the horror and the scares are what any fan of the series would expect. And there are a few curves thrown, all courtesy of a director and co-screenwriter, Fede Alvarez, heretofore best known for his 2013 Evil Dead reboot and the 2016 home invasion movie, Don't Breathe. So Alvarez acquits himself nicely, as does the cast, especially Kaylee Spaney, who I believe starred as Priscilla Presley in that recent docu-pic. She plays Rain, and David Johnson as the android Andy. And though there's nothing as shocking as what viewers experienced via the earlier Alien movies, and you have to just accept some of the pseudoscience mumbo-jumbo, there is plenty of monstrous action and splatter, with some interesting variations on previous set pieces in the franchise. I kind of watching this thing, and I wonder after a while if there was like a viscera wrangler who kept all the goo dripping properly. I don't know, but I just let the whole thing wash over me, so to speak. As these movies go, Alien Romulus is an effective fright machine that is in theaters.
I was reading that during the first Alien, the director splashed the actors with animal guts and blood, and they didn't know it was going to happen in order to get that surprise reaction. So gross.
I know. One of the interesting things about this creature and his or her spawn, there is an alien queen who's a major figure in one of these films, is that their blood is like acid, so it burns through things. So you blow up an alien, and its drippings burn a hole in your spaceship. So there's all kinds of treachery afoot. And you
gotta be careful.
Right. For what these movies are, I thought this was really good for what they are. And I don't recommend that you see it, but I would bet you that our friend Nikki Maduro will be happy to dive in.
Absolutely. So for people that like this kind of movie, it's a yes.
Yeah. Here's something that might be more in your wheelhouse. Inspired by actual events, Skincare is a solid mix of mystery, thrills, and psychodrama that works in large part due to Elizabeth Banks in the lead role. Banks plays a longtime Hollywood esthetician and skincare queen named Hope Goldman, who is about to launch a high-end product line and finds a new skincare clinic opening up in the retail space right across from hers at the crossroads of the world on Sunset Boulevard in L.A. Oh, this kind of competition is kind of scary, particularly when your own business is not in the best of shape. So this newcomer starts to infringe on Hope's client list, and at the same time, her life is made even more stressful by unpleasant things such as having her email account hacked and misused, and seeing bogus, lurid online personal ads placed in her name. The rent is due. The pricey rollout of her skincare products is jeopardized. Could she be saved by a timely morning TV show interview touting her fancy proprietary face creams? Will the eager beaver life coach that she's just met help her through this crisis point? Can things get worse for her? The answer to that last question is probably. So Banks, as the beleaguered Hope, is so good embodying the character's stress, paranoia, and righteousness in the face of threats to her life and career. The fine supporting cast includes Luis Geraldo Mendez as Angel, the smug rival facialist, Louis Pullman as the life coach, Michaela Rodriguez as Hope's loyal assistant, and Nathan Fillion, that's right, star of various TV shows like Castle and Firefly. Yeah, he plays the morning TV talk show host whose interview may provide salvation for Hope. Skincare was co-written and directed by Austin Peters, who keeps the movie's various plates spinning. Even if the ultimate outcome results in some broken china, it's not really cleaned up. I'm not sure what really happened to inspire the movie, but it couldn't have been peach scrub and aloe. Do I recommend Skincare? I personally use a moisturizer, but as for the movie, I give it a conditional yes. I was caught up in Hope's plight, even if the story on screen ends without an epilogue that might have provided some degree of closure. It's in theaters. This is one of those movies that I think will play well at home, too.
Yes, because Dragon's Mane had asked if this is on Hallmark, but no, it's in movie theaters, right?
Oh, this is quite a few cuts above Hallmark.
Okay, all right.
And I mean that in the nicest way, Kim.
When you walked out of the theater, did you regret having seen it?
Not at all. I've regretted not moisturizing more.
You must.
You have to.
Let's
go. Jackpot teams the comedic dynamo Aquafina and the hunky, self-deprecating John Cena, that's right, Peacemaker himself, as the odd couple you never asked for but are happy to get to an extent. They're co-stars in this satirical action comedy, which is directed by Paul Feig of Bridesmaids fame. So expectations are maybe unreasonably high. I don't know. The premise is a little bit of The Purge, a bit of The Running Man, and even a skosh of Battle Royale and The Hunger Games. In the very near future, California is in such dire economic shape that people embrace the so-called grand lottery in Los Angeles, wherein it's perfectly legal for anyone to kill the multi-billion-dollar winner of the lottery within the city limits, as long as no guns are used and the winner is killed before sundown on the day of the win.
Oh, wow.
If the winner survives, the money reverts to them. If the winner is killed, the killer gets the money. So Awkwafina is Katie Kim, a down-on-her-luck actress who has just returned to L.A. after years away. In short order, she discovers, shockingly, she has the winning ticket, and she discovers it when everyone around her tries to murder her. With the exception of John Cena's character, Noel Cassidy, who is a professional bodyguard to lottery winners in exchange for a percentage of the winning, and offers his services to Katie. So cue the violent chases and the fight scenes, some of which are fun. The Awkwafina-Cena chemistry is good. And Awkwafina's Shang-Chi co-star Simu Liu joins the fray as the head of a well-moneyed security agency that also offers to help Katie survive the day, presumably at a price. But for all, Jackpot feels a bit half-baked, and it doesn't hit the heights of the best stuff the actors and director have done in the past. It does have its moments, so it's a good thing you can simply access it on Amazon Prime at home and tune out if it ain't for you. Jackpot on Amazon Prime Video.
What do you think? Is it worth it? It sounds, the way you describe it, it makes it sound really interesting.
It was fun, but again, not up to their best work. There's a lot of, the talent of the cast and the director won't necessarily assure a great movie, as we've seen with Borderlands and to a lesser extent, The Instigators. I think a lot of it is in the script. And there are moments and some funny ones too, but it just gets to be just a lot of clatter at some point.
Yeah. All right. That's too bad because I like the way you described it, but oh well.
Well, yeah, I mean, the premise, the concept is intriguing, but it just, again, feels a little half-baked.
Yeah,
maybe it needed to be in the oven a little longer. I don't know. Okay, so let's wrap up the movie segment here with The Union. Now, The Union is not a heated drama about labor's struggle with management. Instead, it's a middling international espionage thriller about a special ops unit called The Union. And it teams another odd couple, maybe as odd as Awkwafina and John Cena. You get working-class lunk Mark Wahlberg as a Jersey City construction worker named Mike McKenna, and the elegant Halle Berry as a sophisticated secret agent, Roxanne Hall, who is Mike's high school sweetheart, but she left New Jersey and became, I don't know, like Jane Bond. So apparently there's a MacGuffin out there, and all the information on intelligence services worldwide is available in some device, and it's going to be put up for bid, and everybody is rushing to try to get their hands on this thing. There's auctions and shoot-'em-ups and car chases, and some of them are fun, and some of them are, business as usual. And there's an interesting supporting cast besides those guys, too. I mean, the boss of The Union is played by J.K. Simmons, always reliable. That isn't all. Mike Coulter, known to some as Luke Cage from the Marvel TV show, and also as the demon-fighting priest on the TV show Evil, he plays another Union agent. Plus, you get, Jackie Earle Haley as kind of the Q, the tech expert of the Union, and so on and so forth. But it just, it just seems, it didn't knock me out. Let's put it that way. I was diverted by it. It's not, again, boy, it's ridiculous to have to say this. It's not terrible. It's just not memorable. And I will point out that it is in theaters and it is on Netflix. So if you have a Netflix account, you can just click on it and watch it. And, I didn't feel like gouging my eyes out while I was watching it. I mean, I would say these movies were in descending order of quality in my book. You know,
it's too bad because you've got Mark Wahlberg and Halle Berry, and you would think those two in a movie that's kind of action packed would be really good.
I never bought them as a couple. Not for 1 second. By the way, I don't want to, let's say early in the movie, but the Mark Wahlberg character is sleeping with the woman who was his 8th grade teacher. You know, she's she's kind of milfy. Come on, the guy's in his, he's 40 and she's like in her, mid 50s or whatever, but she's played by Dana Delaney of China Beach, who is still quite an attractive woman. And so you kind of buy it. And Lorraine Bracco, of all people, plays Mike McKenna's mother. Remember her from The Sopranos? And what?
Yeah,
she's
absolutely.
She's a terrific actress. And, the clock ticks for all of us. But interesting supporting work there. Again, I mean, J.K. Simmons, Mike Coulter. I mean, this is a good cast, but you kind of never buy the premise that Mike and Roxanne are a legitimate couple, and you really don't see sparks fly between the two characters.
Maybe worth it if it's on Netflix. If it's streaming, then maybe I'm more likely to. And you have some other streaming options for us as well.
Well, I do want to mention the fact that my guilty pleasure, Emily in Paris, is back for season 4. If you ever wanted to see Phil Collins' daughter, Lily Collins, cosplaying as Audrey Hepburn in Funny Face, that's 4 seasons of Emily in Paris.
Yep.
The earnest but kind of clueless American girl pursuing a career at an ad agency in Paris, and obviously caught between 2 lovers, the handsome French chef and the slick British businessman, and dealing with an abusive boss and all that. And there's all this great French pop and all of these shot in Paris and environs, even down on the Riviera. Photography, the settings are all lovely. And I don't know. I watch it and I tolerate its, more mediocre moments because it's cute.
I'm in.
Also, I do want to point out I've watched only the first 2 episodes, so I can't really expound that much on it. But Carl Hiaasen is a great novelist, and his Bad Monkey has been adapted by some of the people that had a lot to do with Ted Lasso. And it stars no less than Vince Vaughn as a detective who has kind of devolved into inspecting restaurants in southern Florida. Carl Hiaasen, his stuff is generally set in Florida. And there is an ugly murder case that turns up, and our lead character, played by Mr. Vaughn, ends up being caught up in this thing. And so, I'm hooked. Okay. What can I tell you? I mean, while I'm waiting for Apple to deliver on the next season of Slow Horses, I'm already in on Bad Monkey. So there you go. It's an Apple TV project. So if you have an Apple TV account, I say give Bad Monkey a try.
Quick recap. You said Alien Romulus recommended for people who like this kind of thing. Skincare, you said yes to that movie. Jackpot, you said it's fun but not the best. And The Union, you said it's not terrible but not memorable.
Right.
You're in, as I am, for Emily in Paris, and you're liking Bad Monkey.
So far. And again, those movies were reviewed in descending order of quality, I think.
All right. Michael Snyder, I am so grateful for you. Thank you for coming on the Mark Thompson Show and giving us all the good skinny on what's going on with entertainment. And I'll see you next week.
That sounds good. And for our fellow Giants fans, Giants take on the A's over in Oakland Coliseum. It's the last dance with the so-called Oakland A's. I will be rooting for my Giants to take both games, but my heart goes out to the Oakland fans who will be losing their team first to, of all places, Sacramento in a minor league park, and then purportedly Las Vegas. But that said, we'll see you next week, Kim.
All right. He comes and goes on a rainbow. Bye, Michael Snyder.
Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
I am very excited to report that I have found Michael Schur. Michael Schur, everybody, a journalist, our political analyst, and hello. Oh, you're muted, my friend. You're muted, Michael Schur. There you go.
Right. Well, that's my fault.
Hey, how are you?
The other I couldn't do anything about, but that's my fault. Yeah, I had no signal. I couldn't even call or email to say I had no signal.
Well, I tried to get through the segment on my own. Of course, it would have been better with you. But one of the things that, before we go, I do want to check in with you about is Kamala Harris is providing today a look at her economic policy, and she's talking about a new child care tax credit or a child tax credit. She's talking about, and I don't know how this is going to be possible, but price gouging at grocery stores and talking to food producers. She's talking about giving first-time home buyers as much as $25,000 for a down payment on a home. She's talking about making sure that one of her first priorities in her first 100 days in office would be to kickstart the construction of affordable homes across America. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I mean, look, these are campaign promises, pie in the sky, a lot of them, but it's talking about the right thing for especially for progressives ahead of her Democratic convention, where they're going to try and project the same unity that Republicans did in Milwaukee last month. Of course, there's a different energy about this convention than we had expected last month when we were in Milwaukee. So we didn't even anticipate that it would be this type of a convention that we were headed toward this coming week. So I think these are important, markers for where she stands on issues and the kind of administration that she's going to want to have. I don't see that each and every one of these are going to happen. And what are they going to do? Republicans are going to say she's going to have to raise taxes. Democrats are going to come back and say, no, we don't have to raise taxes. We just have to get rid of the Trump tax cuts to the most wealthy among us and corporations, because those are the real beneficiaries of the Trump tax cuts. They really helped out big business and corporations. And I think she's trying to frame grocery stores and grocery chains specifically as big grocery, right? I mean, we talk about big oil, we talk about big ag. Well, we haven't heard too much about big grocery. And big grocery, she is alleging, is part of the problem for why it costs a little bit more than it did before, and in many cases a lot more, to buy a loaf of bread and a dozen eggs. Now, on the other side, you're getting a lot of exaggeration as well, as could be expected. There's going to be an exaggeration from both sides in an election year.
Anything you want to say about Trump's weird, I thought it was I watched the full hour and a half of it, press conference that he gave in front of his golf clubhouse in Bedminster, New Jersey. He did talk about the economy, if only to tear down what's happening, not to really present any policies of his own.
Yeah. You know, what Trump has been doing, and I'm starting to see this now, unbeknownst to most Americans, Trump has been giving this type of speech almost on a weekly or at least bi-monthly way over the course of the entirety of the Biden administration. So he's going to places and he's going to friendly places, and he's essentially giving this speech. Well, I've been hearing them because I've been there, and the people that follow him most closely have been there as well. But a lot of press wasn't going to these things after a certain while, because he was a former president and he wasn't making big news until he said that he was going to run again. And then now that he is the nominee of the Republican Party, people are paying closer attention. It's no different than what he's been doing for the past, I would say, 2.5, 3 years. And it rambles and it goes in these directions. But his aim right now should be to bring people into his tent. And what he's doing still is he's speaking to his very, very devoted choir. But this is not going to expand the membership in that choir. And that's what Donald Trump needs to do if he wants to be president again.
He seems almost indignant with the "I'm entitled to launch personal attacks against Kamala Harris," not listening to people who are saying what you just said, which is, you're not bringing more people to the tent with this kind of business.
Right. I mean, that was, and you can understand why Trump would say he should do that, because Trump, when he was the candidate, when he was the nominee, and when he was in 2016 and running against Hillary Clinton, and this kind of behavior was novel and people found it in its own weird way compelling. When that was going on, they thought that, okay, this is working, we're going to go with it. But the charm has worn off of that. Yeah. He is fighting uphill now in a way he hasn't been doing in the past several months. And like we just talked about, Kim, he's trying to get voters that didn't have before, and that this is his path to that. That he thinks this is his path to that may be understandable, but he's got to listen to the other people in the room.
Lastly, I'll ask you about the Democratic National Convention and what we may be expecting from next week.
Right. This is where curmudgeonly Michael comes out. I'm nothing. Right. I mean, you'll get some speeches that are overanalyzed, broken apart. You'll hear people on different networks say he hit a home run or she hit a home run about Kamala Harris. You'll say that, he struck out or she struck out when they give their speeches from other, right wing outlets. I'm always I always lower the bar for these things. They're like conventions of any kind, right? Yeah. I mean, everybody who's like-minded goes. If you go to a dental convention, a lot of dentists have a good time learning about new technology. Well, that's what Democrats do and Republicans do when they have these things. Nothing is really established at these places unless somebody gives a really great speech that sets them up for 4 years from now, which is quite possible. But I think people are going to see Kamala Harris, the vice president, give a speech that's going to matter more than any she's probably ever given to her party, certainly. And, that in and of itself will be interesting. But I wouldn't expect that by Labor Day you'll be thinking about that speech anymore.
What I understand is that for the first time, they're making the Democratic National Convention available across all different platforms. It'll be on Facebook and X and YouTube and, traditional media. This thing will be everywhere.
Yeah, it will. And there'll be a lot of eyeballs. Whether or not they're able to tell you how many eyeballs because of how diffuse that is, I don't know, because I don't know the technology, the Nielsen-like technology. But a lot of people are going to be watching. There's going to be a lot of fascination in what will be, like I said, Kamala Harris's biggest speech of her life. But again, as big as it is and as overanalyzed and as much as you and I and Mark will talk about it next Friday, it's still what it is, right? I mean, and that's what you can't run away from, the fact that this is just a convention, and they'll be talking about other things later on. The debates will, of course, obscure all of that, unless there's a disaster, in which case.
Sure. Of course, and then we're diverted. Michael Schur, thank you for popping in at the end of the show. I appreciate you always trying. It all works out, and I'm sure everybody, it's not Friday unless we hear from you, so I'm glad that we were able to do that. Thank you so much for being here. Have a really good weekend.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Michael Schur, everybody. So happy that I was able to speak with him today. One of my favorite conversations of the week. No Contendo popping in with a $5 super sticker. What he meant to write earlier, I guess, was that the American Israel PAC allows Marjorie Taylor Greene, Boebert, Gozert, etc. a pass versus spending millions to sink progressives Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, and Ilhan Omar. Got it. Thank you for that. No Contendo. Luis coming in with a $5 super sticker. What you are missing, he says, is that he gives the Medal of Freedom. Equals psychology is the best because he is a megalomaniac. The sociopath gives it out. That's what makes it the best, right? Of course. How could I have missed that part of it? Thank you, Luis, for the super sticker. Thank you to everyone who contributes to this show. Find us at themarkthompsonshow.com. Patreon links and PayPal links are there. Mark will be back on Monday, and we'll have Gary Dietrich, political analyst, CBS iHeart analyst. He will be here talking politics with Mark. And True Crime Corner returns with Courtney. So we'll get a good story on Monday as well. The After Party Live is next. I will meet you over there. The link is in the chat, so please check it out. Please subscribe. And I'll see you there and on Monday back here on YouTube. Thank you for spending your time with us this afternoon. And again, Mark is back on Monday. Thank you for everything, Tony. It's been quite...
Today's a little out of order because we had Michael at the end, but still.
It all worked out. We shook it up a little bit, but you know what? We got it all in. That's right.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. Have a great weekend.
See you next week, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you, Tony.
See ya.